Whether you're just getting started with watercolor portraits or you're looking to take your work to the next level, working on isolated studies of different facial features can make a huge difference. And of course, eyes in particular make a portrait come to life and are often the focal point in portraits, so it's important to know how to paint them well. And this is why in today's video, I am sharing my top 6 tips for painting believable, glowing eyes with watercolor. This is all information that I wish I had known when I was first getting started with portraits myself, which would have allowed me to move forward way faster. If you're interested in checking out the real-time, fully narrated tutorial for these 2 sets of watercolor eyes that I'm going to be briefly sharing in this video, they are available over on my Patreon, along with over 130 real-time tutorials that I haven't shared anywhere else, and this exclusive library of classes is available for members in the budding artist and rising star tier. Alright, with all that said, let's jump in. Let's jump straight into tip number 1, and this one is going to be to make sure that you're starting with a great quality reference photo. A lot of people, when they're just getting started, maybe they don't know what to look for in a reference photo that they're going to be using for drawing or painting purposes, or rush into the process unaware that the photo that they have chosen is going to make the process harder and more frustrating than it needs to be, and that they'll likely not be arriving at the results that they could arrive if they were using a better photo. I have another video where I explain about the main things that I make sure to look for in a photo when I'm going to be using it for drawing or painting purposes. I'll make sure to link to that video down below. One of the things that I share in that video is that you should be using a photo that is large enough to see details clearly. You don't want to be using a very small photo or a photo that looks pixelated or blurred when you want to zoom in. Another thing is you want to make sure that you are using a photo that has good lighting, not over or underexposed. I explained what those terms mean in that other video. You don't want a photo that is too dark or too light, because those will lead to flat results. You want a good balance between lights and darks. You want to see lights, midtones, and darkest darks, because if you don't see these different values in your reference photo, you're not going to be able to recreate them in your painting. And having that good value or tonal range is what leads to believable results, is what leads to depth. Tip number 2 is to spend time creating a solid preliminary pencil sketch before jumping into the painting process. Your preliminary sketch or outline drawing is the foundation for everything that is coming up next. No amount of color or shading or detail is going to lead to realistic results if proportions and shapes and all of these different little anatomical tidbits are not accounted for and accurate in your preliminary sketch. So whether you're tracing over a reference photo or you are creating your preliminary sketch freehand, make sure that you're spending enough time on it before starting with the painting process. I know it can be super exciting and you want to get started right away, but I want to encourage you not to rush it, because this makes a big difference. Make sure that your pupils, which are those black looking circles in the middle of the iris, are a believable size. Sometimes I see beginners draw them way too large or way too small. And also make sure that the eyes look like they are looking toward the same direction. I find it very helpful to observe that reference photo closely and look at the shape created by the sclera, which is the white of the eye, to the left and right of the iris. And I'm trying to replicate that shape in my drawing to make sure that the iris and the pupil in both eyes look like they're looking toward the same direction. Personally, I also find it helpful to sketch in my eyelashes, or at least a few of them, so that I can get a better idea of how I will be doing those brush strokes when I am painting. And don't forget your highlights. That's very important to plan and keep protected, or make sure that you're bringing in somehow by the end. Highlights are very important because they're going to help make the eyes look moist and realistic, and they're going to help the eyes come to life. Tip number 3, learn about eye anatomy. We simply don't know what we don't know. And the more we know about what we're drawing or painting, this will show in our work because it helps inform the choices that we make along the way. It helps us know what to look for in reference photos. It helps us understand the three-dimensional structure and nature of the feature on hand. For example, eyes are like spheres that are actually sitting in deep sockets in our skulls. And so if we just stem from this understanding that the eyeball is actually spherical, right? Part of it is inside of this deep socket, and that the eyeball is being covered by thin skin in the form of eyelids, and that there is a brow bone that is creating a bit of a bump above the eye. We now have a better understanding of where shadows are going to be. The sphere is covered by eyelids, so the eyelids are going to be curved and popping out a little bit, right? Creating a shadow underneath them. The brow bone is jutting out a little bit, so there is a shadow underneath it. And there is usually some amount of shadow in the inner corner of the eye and along the bridge of the nose. Simply having these things in mind is going to allow us to shade more accurately. If we don't think of things as being three-dimensional as we're developing our shading, it's likely that we'll arrive at flat-looking results. And also by understanding the anatomy of eyes, we now know that there are specific things that we have to make sure to bring in. For example, when I am drawing or painting eyes, there are things that I always make sure to bring in each eye. And these things are the iris, the pupil, the tear duct, water or tear lines along the lower and upper eyelids, creases or skin folds created by the eyelids, the sclera, of course, a highlight or two in both eyes, and eyelashes. Tip number 4 is add shading into the sclera. So again, the sclera is the white of the eye. And even though we refer to it as the whites of our eyes, it's not really completely white. Our studies or portraits are always going to look more believable if we at least add some amount of shading into them. So remember what I was mentioning before, the eyeball is a sphere that is sitting inside a deep socket in our skulls and is being wrapped by our eyelids. In a normal light situation where the light is coming from above the person, the upper eyelid is going to be creating a small shadow on the sclera. And almost always we're going to see some amount of shadows near the tear duct and the outer corner of the eye. I always start with a very, very light watered down gray, and then I develop a second layer where I go in with a slightly darker gray to push darkest shadows in the sclera a tiny bit more. Tip number 5 is use layering to create depth incrementally. Start with light washes, developing your lighter values, and build toward your darkest values gradually and incrementally. Make sure that you're allowing layers to dry completely in between to avoid overworked results. If we go in too dark too fast, we're going to arrive at heavy, flat results because we're failing to bring in those lighter values. And lighter values are essential if we're looking for dimension and depth and glowing results. We're using the medium's translucency and we're bringing in the white paper under that paint to help us develop those lighter values. Working from lights to darks gradually and working in layers gives you more control. The only thing that I do paint in with a very dark value since the beginning is the pupil. And the only reason why I do this is because pupils are black and relatively small. Tip number 6 is practice your eyelashes. I cannot tell you how many times I've ruined portrait paintings or eye studies because I do not take time to practice or warm up before painting in those eyelashes. Make sure that you're adding the eyelashes until the very end of the process because you don't want to have to go back and do corrections around the eyelashes after they have been painted in. You'll likely just end up smudging your eyelashes, which you want pretty sharp and defined, and muddying up and graying down too much the skin colors around them. Make sure that you've chosen a good paintbrush for the task on hand. It should be pretty small and should come to a nice fine tip. But also make sure that the consistency of the color mixture that you're going to be using for your eyelashes is what you need it to be. You don't want it to be super watery or super dry. I usually go in with more of a coffee consistency initially, and then if I am feeling comfortable and I like how things are looking, I go in with more of a milk consistency. A few things that I make sure to have in mind when painting eyelashes are A, make sure that you're not going overboard with the amount. If you add too many, it can end up looking like the person is wearing extensions or like a doll. Also, make sure that there is a good variety throughout your lines and marks that you're creating for your eyelashes. You want them clustering together in different ways, and you want to bring in a variety of lengths as well. If you observe eyelashes in real life, their length changes throughout the eyelid. The closer they are to the inner corner of the eye or the tear duct, the smaller they are, and in the center and outer section of the eyelid, they are larger. Yes, the lower lashes are much smaller than the upper lashes, but there's also a change in length throughout them. Make sure that you're using soft curves instead of stiff straight lines. Bring in some variety, imperfection. Make sure that you're staying away from patterns or anything too organized, and this will help you create much more natural looking results. And moving into my final bonus tip, know when to stop. And this one is an important one that I want you to have in mind whether you're working on studies of individual facial features or full portraits. Hold yourself back from doing too much. Oftentimes, less is more when you're working with watercolor. If you try to create a carbon copy of that reference photo and you're not allowing the paint to do its thing, you're trying to control things way too much. You do too much layering, too much fiddling of that paint after it's been placed on paper. You can very easily arrive at overworked results that don't convey that freshness, that looseness, that expression that is so beautiful and so particular to watercolor. So yes, we're using a reference photo, but we're also creating a painting, which is an interpretation, an artistic rendition of what we're observing. We're using the reference photo to help us remember important tidbits and information to develop the level of realism that we're after in our painting, but it is not about copying the reference photo exactly as is. We need to do these things that are going to allow us to bring more of ourselves into our work, allow our hand to be present and visible in what we're doing, and also make choices and use techniques so that we can allow the medium to shine to its full capabilities. And also just keep in mind, for any painting medium in general, realism doesn't come from painting every single eyelash or vein or little crease that you see in that reference photo. It comes from understanding what makes something look realistic and knowing about the subject matter that it is that we're painting. Realism comes from suggesting form, understanding its 3D-ness, understanding light and shadow. With these things in mind, we're able to go in with more confidence as we're painting in those shadow shapes and so on, with more intentional color choices and brush work. I want to encourage you to take mini breaks along the way. Step back and view your painting as a whole and ask yourself, does this look real? Does it feel real? And do I really need to do more to arrive at believable results? It's easy to keep adding and adding, but I think as artists, it's important to know when to stop and when to call a piece done. And that is it for this video. I really hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that you found these tips super, super helpful and that you take them with you to your watercolor eye studies and also complete portraits. Thank you so very much for joining me on this one. I wish you a wonderful rest of your day. Enjoy your art practice and see you very, very soon.